debate begins now. I invite the Prime Minister to speak.
Hello, everybody. We interpret the motion as this. I would put an X in the center square. We put an X as show our power, show our here, and in the center square in the world. We will show our power in the world that we're here. And many times in history, it has been repeated that the biggest countries and nations have had more power and respect and business by showing their power. Take the U.S. for example, that they were taken seriously after showing their power against England, and got the Treaty of Paris and got help from Europe, and they did get help from some European countries when they did. And they also in Russia, some people don't believe it, but Russia showed their military power and showed their power as in economically too, and got respect from it. The U.S. was very too. So, and China's another good example. They got a lot of. They got right when they were improving they were improving militarily, and their business started going up. And of course, we would like to show it too, because nobody really likes to be shown as vulnerable to invasions. Because China, take it for example, but not now, but many years ago, China many years ago didn't have a strong army, and when in World War II, when Japanese started, and they were vulnerable to attacks, and the U.S. had to help them. That's another thing, because we would get to help other nations and other people into their own affairs and go for a better and a more better world. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. First of all, if people want too much power, if people get some power, most people would get greedy, and with too much power being in one person, like a dictatorship, it affects the country. For example, like communist countries like North Korea, Cuba, or like China, one person has too much power that it affects the whole country. You can see that those communist countries are relatively poor, and the greediness of their leader is affecting the whole country. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to remind you that not all countries which have been given or have shown their power are communists, and actually a lot of them are developed countries and have a democratic government. For example, take the United States. They have shown their power in the world with their military and economically, and they are a developed country, and they don't have a dictatorship, and they have a better and democratic government. And take for example Russia also, they don't have a communist government anymore. They have more of a democratic government, and they also are doing well economically and by military power. China, even though it's for now it's communist, economically it's doing very well, and not all the people there are poor, so we would well, that's all. I just want to reinforce that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, as a member of the government said that the U.S. is an example of someone who has shown their power, but is not in a dictatorship. Okay, so sometimes, like, what does power do? Okay, so at the first, the U.S. is like, okay, everyone like sees the U.S. as an example for a whole bunch of things, but then again, it like now is it in a good economic situation? And then also like sometimes it has been like the U.S. has interfered in other countries' problems, and as showing its power in other countries, interfering in other countries. And sometimes causing even more conflict than there is, and sometimes even resolving it. But most of the time, there is more conflict. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Throughout history, great leaders, for example, taking Napoleon, he was a great military leader, but then he became a dictator, and eventually he went down. Other countries took him down. And yeah. So to wrap it up, it means that if you get too greedy for power, it wouldn't be exactly good to show up your power and get too greedy with it. Thank you.
So, as the opposition mentioned before, that the U.S. created more trouble sometimes, you don't necessarily have to interpret it into, you don't have to necessarily get involved directly into other conflicts to show your power. And they also talked about the economy, which was caused by the falling of the banks, basically, mostly, and it wasn't caused by war. But then the war did spend some money. And I would also like to say that Napoleon was taken down, but it was showing his power in not the right way by invading other countries. To show your power, you not necessarily have to be bad. You can be good with other countries. You have to help people for the prosperity. We also said that you could help other people with your power by many ways. If you are military strong, and we also said.
Point of order has been called. Yes.
Isn't he making a new argument?
What new argument is that?
Talking about how
The new argument that he made is when he was starting to say how he meant that the U.S. showing its power doesn't necessarily mean interfering in other countries.
By your own admission, I understand that as him further explaining a previous argument that he made, fleshing an argument out. The point is not well taken, the argument stands.
Well, showing power doesn't necessarily have to, like they said, no, it doesn't necessarily have to be taken as more a threat, but of like we said before, people taking you seriously, or so you don't get invaded, like we said before. So thank you.
Congratulations to Kijun and Gabriel on their first debate. With a total of 4 arguments, the government clearly won. Opposition, I did not receive any full arguments with claim, data, and warrant that related to the interpretation of the motion given. So the government won by a large margin. Congratulations, government.